If you grew up Ukrainian Canadian, you're emotionally attached to Ukraine.
We do this as volunteers full-time, and we have the energy to do it.
But you just proved that the strong sense of volunteerism that exists in Ukraine must be genetic.
This focus on civil society and the strength of civil society, we haven't seen, I don't think, anywhere else in the world.
Lesya Alexandra Granger is a Canadian civil society leader and educator with over 30 years of experience in multilingual education and community development. As CEO and chair of Mriya Aid, she leads a volunteer network supporting Ukraine's defense and recovery. Under her leadership, Mriya Aid has delivered over $3.5 million in life-saving equipment and training to nearly 300 Ukrainian Deminers, helping build a safer and more secure future for Ukraine. Lesya's work bridges Canada and Ukraine, combining education, humanitarian aid, and a deep commitment to rebuilding lives and restoring hope.
Hello, I'm Natalka Cmoc. This is Off the Record, and I'm here today with Lesya Granger, who is the president and chair of Mriya Aid, an organization in Canada, in Ottawa. I'm thrilled to have you here because you're not in Kyiv often, and so I wanted to make sure that we had this conversation before you left. So, what is Mriya Aid?
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It's wonderful. Mriya Aid is an organization that was established in early 2022, right after the Russian invasion, full-scale invasion, rather, of Ukraine. And it was established in order to support Ukraine generally, and more specifically, those defending Ukraine and those on the front lines.
Okay, so before we get too far, I need everyone to understand that we actually know each other probably almost our entire lives. So what are the chances of two people from Ottawa being here at the same time? And it's actually quite high, because if you grew up Ukrainian Canadian, you're emotionally attached to Ukraine. So how did you start Mriya Aid? Because tell us a little bit about your background. Tell us what you do and how you came to do Mriya Aid.
Yes, well, in the I guess it must have been early 2000s.
Yes.
One of the Canada-Ukraine Parliamentary Program students said to me that he really respects how I am. And he said, wow, you're a huge inspiration to me because of your patriotism and love of Ukraine. And you are, a great example of somebody from the diaspora. At least that's how he looked at it. And I said,
I agree with him, by the way.
Well, I'm not saying it to elicit more compliments, but I said to him, I don't feel that way at all. I feel like a jack of all trades and master of none. Why? Because I started off in one field, art history. I went on to numismatics, collector's coins at the Royal Canadian Mint.
I didn't know that.
Yes,
that's really
worked
cool.
There for 8 years.
Okay.
In the area of history, like as their historian, and also marketing and communications.
Okay.
And then my husband and I had children, and then I went and I became the principal of the Ukrainian Saturday School.
My children attended that.
Yes, you remember those days. And so after that, I actually went and worked towards a second master's. And I got into plurilingualism, second language learning, and I managed a program. Actually, it was a number of schools of second language or international languages in Ottawa, in one of the school boards, a French language school board. And I had 3,500 kids and 350 staff members that I, was responsible for. And so I really felt like, I sort of bounced around too many places. And so Mriya Aid is sort of a logical extension of this being all over the map a little bit. But, still there's certain threads that are woven through that. And I suppose they would be management, problem solving. Communications, yes, and working with people. I really genuinely like people.
That shows. Last time or a few times you were here, because you come frequently, you had a training session with women sappers. and it went over very well. But do you still? So maybe tell us. Let's back it up a little bit. Tell us a little bit about what does Mriya Aid do?
Right. So in the first year, we did what many did, which was filling gaps like crazy. It was very hectic. We were working 20-hour days. Everybody was exhausted, across the globe, really, all Ukrainians and people who supported Ukraine. And so after the first year, we realized that we really should be, focusing on a few areas and building our expertise there. And we decided that demining, mine action, is a very important area because it really feeds into everything from defense to rendering communities safe to helping victims and also to making reconstruction possible. And we realized that this is going to take a long time. This is the most mined and contaminated area, sadly, in the world.
Okay, so I'm going to ask a provocative question. So why do we need another demining company? I mean, or not company, but organization. There's so many. Tell us why.
That's what I thought at first. I thought there are so many, and we're just, we don't even have any expertise in this.
Yes.
Not very much, anyways.
But you do now.
We definitely do now. And but I didn't realize that actually it's quite a small community.
Oh,
Even with the international NGOs, it's a small community. I think that more importantly, though, it was very much a community that was based prior to 2022 on ideas and on realities that were very different than what we have in Ukraine. Today and since then, unfortunately. And so I think that the mindset, the way people worked was very different. And so actually it was quite it was quite seamless in that way for us to kind of go in there and start learning along with all of these NGOs that had been doing it, as humanitarian aid rather than as building a society and an institution and whole entire structure the way it has evolved in Ukraine.
So what you're saying is there isn't any competition, not really.
And actually, people do work closely together.
Yes.
I know that the funding, so for example, for NGOs, the funding internationally, I mean, it is limited. And everybody would like to have some funding in order to complete their mission and mandate. However, there is a lot of partnerships that are formed, and very much lesson learned and other information and knowledge sharing going on. And I know this summer, for example, we stepped back from funding opportunity because we really realized that the people there were competent people locally in Ukraine that should be doing that, and we will continue focusing on some of the areas that we're a little bit more involved in, such as operational demining.
Okay, so tell us what that is.
So operational demining is demining in the zone of, I suppose you could say, active combat or immediately, adjacent or next to it.
Is it different from humanitarian demining?
So humanitarian demining in Ukraine actually looks similar to operational demining, to what normally would be done by the military. And this includes NGOs and operators who are working because they're constantly under threat. Obviously, they're not as much under threat as defenders are on and all along the front line when the sappers go in and create corridors or clear areas for fortifications or logistics for the army. And so that is operational demining. Humanitarian demining, especially historically, before the troubles that came to Ukraine. These were usually done post-conflict, post-war. So people could do it methodically, carefully, and without worrying about being targeted.
Right, and you can't wait, right?
You can't. And so humanitarian demining does happen in Ukraine, but it always has that element of immediate danger as well.
And so you were just in Tokyo. at the conference. So I had the Japanese ambassador here, and I saw a photo of you with him as well. So what was the conference about, and did you learn anything new?
Yes, and that's always I'll start with your second part of your question, because when we, prepare for a conference, I think to myself, gee, is this just going to be more platitudes and more talk, right? Where everybody comes, talks, and then leaves, as often happens in conferences in all sectors or, across the board. But no, I don't think that certainly is not my sense of what happened either there or in other conferences about Ukraine that I've attended. Japan, the Tokyo conference was very useful and interesting in a number of ways. First of all, it was very helpful and I suppose uplifting that the Japanese government and society really stands behind Ukraine. That really came through. And so it wasn't just about partnerships. It was about genuine friendship. And that really means a lot. On the other side of the world, something that seems so far away from us, as far as Ukraine seems to other people in the globe, that connection is made. And I think that it's worth the, being tired and traveling so far and the added expense as well. That was well worth it. And then, of course, there was the content that was really important, with the main message being that, this is a completely different context. The technologies have and are being developed to ensure increased and, increased demining pace.
Are they becoming more and more by robotics, I guess? I'm probably not describing it well, but instead of humans, do you still need humans to go demine? You do. Okay.
And you need humans for all of the places the robots and the machines can't go. Also, you don't want to necessarily have machines everywhere, because when the machines go and these munitions explode, they contaminate the environment in a terrible way. And so humans really are the only ones that can go and do what is called low order techniques, where you disable the munition, the ordnance, but it doesn't actually explode and it doesn't release all of the chemicals. And of course, there will be a great need to really move things along very quickly in demining, because the longer these things stay on and in the earth, the more they leach, the greater the contamination.
Yes.
And so however, we desperately need that technology, and that is a very important component in order to speed things up, because really they do need to be done. We can't do it over 100 years or 700 years, or there are various estimates of what it would take human beings to do it. And this is where operational demining is also important, because operational demining is quick. It's not the methodical way. And so Mriya Aid, we send Ukrainian sappers from state agencies to be taught IMAS. That's the International Mine Action Standards. And these are very much focused on personal and team safety. And so even though we are teaching operational deminers humanitarian processes, this actually saves their lives even when they do have to rush. And so the question of human versus machine, they will always go, hand in hand, and yet you really need both in order to expedite the process.
That makes a lot of sense. Thanks for explaining that, because we're seeing the whole field, and I'm not making a pun here, evolve. And it's clear that I was talking to the Japanese ambassador, and he was talking about how technology is really driving the changes, which is good. But I'm also nervous because the mines themselves are becoming more complicated, and something that could have been detected by metals, from what I understand, many of them are not being detected by metals. I guess they're using all kinds of materials. So is that something that IMAS is able to keep up in training as the things are evolving here?
Actually, IMAS hasn't really kept up as much as it should. And that is because it was made for humanitarian demining
Yes.
in non-conflict areas. And so the Ukrainians remind us that their standards are very important, and we absolutely 100% agree, and that people need to be trained almost, everything needs to be looked at again, because there's the combat engineering part. So why would humanitarian deminers need any kind of combat engineering elements? Well, maybe to save their lives, like they will have to
Yes.
know how to operate drone detectors and whatnot in order to save their lives. So the situation in Ukraine is very different than anything anybody has ever seen before. And that's where technologies do also help, because there are additional supportive technologies like the, electronic warfare and other, I mean, they call it electronic warfare, but if we want to say, the detector of, death, the certain death. So, these help. And the training itself, too, I'll tell you, Natalka, was really interesting, because when you work really hard at something and you hear all these different perspectives and you see the complexity of the program, you think of the situation rather, you think to yourself, gee, are we really doing the right thing? Or is this useful? Or is it impactful? But the sappers, whether they're working with emergency services, police, or the Army and SSTS, the State Special Transport Service, they come to us and they off the field and they say, that training that you guys provided literally saved my life.
Wow.
And saves our lives every day. And so that human factor, beyond the machine and beyond the technology that we so desperately need, is so important.
Wow, that's very meaningful. Now, as I mentioned earlier, just to go back to that point that I was asking earlier, you focused on women sappers. Why? Why are you focused on women sappers? I don't know if you still are, but you were at the time.
Yeah. Yes, we are. For all of our programs, we ensure that there's always a minimum target, if you will, of recruitment and inclusion. This is a real challenge in many services, including, SESU, including the emergency services. They tell us, look, it's really hard for us to get any, just generally in recruitment, let alone recruiting women. In the Army, we often hear in the news and in other contexts about the great number of women in the Ukrainian armed forces, and this is true.
Something like 7,000 on the front at the moment. I don't know if that's accurate, but that's what's been quoted to me.
Yes. And so these are much higher than, in other contexts, other countries. However, sappers is a little bit more challenging overall, globally, but even in Ukraine, even despite the higher numbers of women. And so for us, it's really important that not only the women have a place and are able to, have
Progress.
advancement, progress and advance in their careers and have it not just a task that they do, but an actual, career progression. But it's also really important for the men who are working with them to understand gender dynamics and that actually does matter and make a difference, because we collect data. We collect quite a lot of data, and it's and we really go in deep on the data with them. And so we in the surveys before training, very often men will say, I don't really need this. I kind of know it. It's obvious. I have good relations with women. What's the big deal? And women usually say, yeah, I think this is pretty important. Let's see what it looks like. And then after the training, and we don't do a whole ton of it. It's not sort of the focus of the training, but overall for demining, but it's an important component. And when they go through that, few hours of discussion and hearing about, what international norms are for women's inclusion, and other gender considerations, they say to us, we discuss things I didn't even think of before. And, and actually one man
That's
wrote—
a public good if I've ever heard of one.
Yes. And, one man even wrote, he said, I just really would like next time for you maybe to get into a little bit more into cross sections and areas that are, non-binary, for instance.
Yes.
And that was very, I'll be honest with you, I was surprised at the, I think it was something like 75% said, yeah, this is solid and I would want it again.
Wow, that's incredible. And how do women do as sappers? Because I know there's a lot of nervousness about having women as sappers.
Well, there is.
How do they perform?
A lot of the men, especially, those who are team leaders, both in Ukraine and outside of Ukraine, and most of these people are vets or active military or other state agency service people. And they say, actually, what they tell us is, this is so obvious to us. We know that women actually do this job better than a lot of the guys.
And why do you think? Why is that?
Well, they always hesitate because they don't want to generalize.
Yes.
Again,
Yes.
or certainly have any kind of stereotypes. But they say it is methodical work. Even when you're doing it under pressure, it is methodical work.
They say the same about snipers.
Yes, I've heard that too. Yeah. And the women that we've worked with say, look, I want my community cleared, or this is an important part of how to defend and build up Ukraine.
Yeah.
And I want to be part of this.
I met someone from Halo Trust, a young woman, and I don't like people referring to her as a girl because she might be only 21, but she joined and became a sapper when she was 19, and she's now 21, leading teams with Halo Trust. And just looking at her eyes, and it's like, wow, she's solid. And we're discovering a lot about ourselves. Ukrainians are discovering a lot about themselves, and they're realizing the strength that they have. And you must come across that all the time. There must be people you've met that have just floored you. Are there any people that maybe you don't have to name their names, but maybe tell their story that you think is very inspiring?
Yes, First, I just want to start that the examinations and certifications. No. This is on exactly to what you're saying. Are very for IMAS for EOD are very rigorous and quite difficult, and not everybody passes. I mean, I'm sure there are programs offered where everybody passes, everybody gets their participation paper, but I don't know of those programs. I just know
we don't want that in sappers.
No, exactly, because one small mistake and that's it. That's why it's really important and very important that we work with organizations, training centers that offer, such rigorous standards that they're okay to fail people, and that they can demonstrate to us, like, how many people have you failed and what do you say about it? But there also should be no shame in failing, because failing sometimes means that you are just not cut out for that work. And so these programs also sort of weed out. I mean, that's not a very nice way to put it, but you know what I mean?
Yep.
They sort of help people understand that, maybe this isn't for me, and it's okay. Whether I'm male or female, I don't have to be so tough that I can, my nerves of steel could handle this, because it truly isn't for everybody.
Well, I can't be a pianist either, or a surgeon, and that's okay.
Yes,
right?
Yeah. And in terms of personal stories, there's one that really stands out for us. Our team, all 3 board members, went last May. We went to visit the SSDS training center in Chernihiv, so northern Ukraine. We went with certain other Canadians as well. We had a little bit of a group that went, and the Mriya Aid team asked the commander there, and the commander who's in charge of the training center itself. We asked him to please facilitate a meeting with the women who graduated with us. Now, some of them graduated in level 1, 2, but most of them in 3 and 3+. So 3+ is a very, high level of knowledge and application, because you already have to have worked in the field in order to even begin studying the 3+ level, and you can then become an instructor. And so we met these women, and there was one woman who said, look, my husband's a sapper, and I couldn't just stand by and not be a sapper. And I believe she was either a doctor or or an accountant before. I would have to check because there's so many people we meet that, you know, I mix it up a little bit sometimes. But the point is a completely different profession. She went into this one. She achieved her 3+, and then she decided to become a diver so that she can engage in underwater demining.
Wow.
And underwater demining, like if you need nerves of steel for the regular one error and you are absolutely done for underwater. And so that, you know, just this, I suppose, complete sacrifice that people are willing to make in order to make communities and their countries safe is just something that I don't know that I could do, and I'm just floored. Like you said,
I'm glad you raised that because I'm floored so often here by the people I meet, and I think what really touches me is the people who realize that they have more strength than they ever realized that they could have. I'm thinking of some of the mothers who have lost their child, which is for me, that is the most unbearable thing that I can't even imagine. And but yet they lost their child in the front line. I say child, but they're adults, and they turn their life around, and then they become a strength of pillar so that they can continue, so that their child didn't die in vain. And some of them have become. I've met one woman who became a psychotherapist, for example. Who up until then basically was at home and decided, no, I want to, and really stepped forward, and they're flourishing. And I think that's what happens in the war. A lot of people realize that they're much stronger than they ever imagined. So in this field, for sure, you're going to have many examples like that. But you work with Ukrainians. Are you working with local organizations here?
Yes, we are. We're working with local organizations and, of course, the personnel from the state agencies, from the Armed Forces of Ukraine and the other state agencies. And so it's interesting because some of them have already dedicated their lives to the service. And here they are adding this layer of complexity and additional sacrifice and service. So it really is inspiring. And I think a lot of people around the world are very inspired by Ukraine and what's happening, but we need to continue supporting them and supporting one another. And not only, with money, not only with, funding, which is desperately, desperately needed in so many areas, but also just on that one-to-one, we really make an effort to, even when we are in Canada, which is most of the year, we're only here maybe 3 or 4 times a year for a month at a time. But the rest of the time, we talk to them every single day. Obviously not to the thousands that we've supported, but to the commanders, to the women. We also reach back and do interviews regularly, just to see, first of all, see how they're doing, and second of all, to just see how their thinking is evolving and how they're feeling and feeling about and very importantly, to give them that sense that people truly care. We may be really far away, but we care.
So what are some of the trends that you're seeing? I'd love that you're collecting all this data because it's very telling and it's going to be very useful for others as well.
Well, when I read the news, I'm often, even myself, sort of like we say in Ukrainian, opускаються руки. You think, oh goodness, it's so impossible. Like this horde from the east and the north. This Russian, horde is just like incessant, and the bombings are every night. I don't have to, list it all. It's just so awful, and the prisoners of war that are still, suffering every single day. It's so demoralizing, and I sometimes think, this is. If we're feeling pressure in the West and just I don't want to say being tired from it, but just being so overwhelmed with the negative news. Goodness knows, Ukrainians must be tired, just really exhausted. We know that they are, but even morally. And then when we speak with them, it's hard. They're suffering immensely. but they still stand. And the idea, and I love it that they just say, damn it, no, we're not giving up, no matter what. And that's kind of also the sense I got from my grandparents when we came to Canada. And they sort of said, like, you'll have to kill me first. And I know that sounds very negative, but actually it's positive.
It's very positive,
we're not going to give up ever. And I feel that. So even though we sometimes, like, in this evolution of, how people progress through their training, their challenges, like in their career progression.
So if you saw your babcia now, would she be surprised that you're doing what you're doing?
I don't think so, and especially not my grandfather. So I was close to my grandmother, yes, but I was even closer to my grandfather. And my grandfather was born in 1905.
Wow.
He lived through both first and second World War.
Wow.
He was, an adolescent in the first one, or child adolescent, and then and so. I'll tell you something funny that's a little bit maybe personal, but there were family members who felt that he was like very much overly patriarchal, like he's a patriarch and doesn't understand or appreciate women. But maybe because I was a tomboy and maybe because I had this fighting spirit, I always felt like he totally gets me and we're really close. And so I know that he would not be surprised. And he really taught us, he said, don't ever attempt to swim upstream if you don't have to.
Yes.
Because one day you will, and you need to conserve your energy and build yourself up for that. So he gave many, many pieces of advice like that, but definitely somebody who had lived through the hardships and the horrors that we see today. And I think that even though we talk about, a collective trauma, there is also another side to that, and that is collective resilience. That is intergenerational, not only intergenerational trauma, but intergenerational resistance and resilience.
I have that fish swimming upstream now in my mind with your face on it. I think I can visualize it. Mriya Aid. How did you pick the name?
Well, actually, there were two groups of people helping Ukraine. One was a group of Canadian Armed Forces personnel who had worked in Operation Unifier in Ukraine. And they had an organization that I can't even say it was an organization. They just were a loose group of, volunteers helping their friends and colleagues on the front in those first week or two after the full-scale invasion. And they sort of I don't know, gathered around a name, Trident Aid. And we had Mriya Tech in our little group. It was a group of civilians. Most of us had Ukrainian background, so we were Ukrainian Canadian, and we merged at one point very early on, like within a week or two of the full scale invasion. I think it was a supplier, a supplier of some kind of equipment that put us together that said, hey, there's another group working on something similar. So when we came together, we just took their aid and our Mriya.
And why Mriya?
Because of the plane. Because the plane Mriya, that was renowned, as you know, for humanitarian aid across the globe. And it was built in Ukraine, the Mriya, the Antonov, I think it's 22, I forget. I should know. But because of that plane, when it blew up, that was very symbolic. And so we thought, we're supplying that help and that aid. We're going to call ourselves Mriya after that plane.
So I have to admit that I am a fan of yours. I think that the work you're doing is incredible. And the very fact that you just decided to make this happen, and you did. And I am confessing on camera that I am a fan and I'm a supporter. And I'm very grateful that you're here, you and Lubomir are here, and the work that you're doing. And keep on doing it. It's making a difference. I have tested it with people that from various fields, and I said, "Oh yeah, have you ever heard of Mriya Aid?" And they're like, "Yeah, of course we have." So you are a known entity in Ukraine, and that's really important. People view you as very supportive. That when they learn that there's really no reason for you to be here. You just are determined to help and make a difference. It really resonates with Ukrainians. So on behalf of all those people that have said that to me, let me say that on behalf of all those people, дякую, сердечно дякую. And keep that up because you are making a difference. Ukraine needs this. They feel supported. And like you said, clearing all of that, all of those, the territories of mine, forest of mines, waters from mines is going to be a lot of work. Has to start now, if not yesterday, but not in the future.
No.
So is there anything else you'd like to add or say before we finish?
Just thank you so much for that support, and thank you to everyone who supports us. We do work very hard on the advocacy for Ukraine and advocacy for defenders and deminers in particular. We do this internationally, and so we really do put in a lot of effort. And of course, it's our personal time and our professional time because we do this as volunteers full time, and then our hobby, our weekends. It's one of those things where the need is great and we have the energy to do it. And I foresee that we are able to and will continue to do this for the next 2 decades, maybe even 3 if
Well, you just proved that the strong sense of volunteerism that exists in Ukraine must be genetic.
Yes.
Because you're seeing that in Ukrainian Canadians, you're seeing that in various diaspora groups. You're seeing that in people who just love Ukraine and have absolutely no heritage, Ukrainian heritage, and just believe in Ukraine. And I think it's because they see how much they're doing themselves and they want to be part of that. We also see that it's just not fair and we want to right or wrong,
yes.
Of course. But it's really hard not to get behind people who are just putting everything they have into this. So, yeah, it's important to be part of this time.
It is. And I think the people who are part of it also really appreciate the dynamic quality of the society and civil society in Ukraine, because really those of us who have been in touch with Ukraine, as you know yourself, this civil society, this focus on civil society and the strength of civil society has gone on for centuries and certainly the last 3 decades in a way that we haven't seen, I don't think, anywhere else in the world. So thank you also for your great advocacy. And it's great to be here together and on the land of our ancestors.
Yeah, and it was really nice that you took the time, because I know your schedule is very busy, so you took the time to meet today. We will share information about Mriya Aid in the podcast, so anybody who wants to learn more about what you're doing or figure out how they can get involved, we'll share that information, because I have no doubts that there will be others who will want to join the work that you're doing. So thank you very much. I've been talking with Lesya Granger from Mriya Aid. I'm Natalka Cmoc. You've been listening to Off the Record. Thanks.
Thanks so much. Дякую.